You know what time it is. Buckle up and enjoy the ride.
And we are live. Greetings to our loyal WFYL listeners around the world. Welcome back to your Philadelphia live stream, only on the Freedom Station. I want to thank each and every one of you for tuning in once again, because you still have the right to hear and the right to be heard. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mike G. As always, with me are Philly Chris, Russ the producer, and Liberty Lee. And you're listening to Mike G in the Morning with The Law Matters. And you can listen to our program every Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern, only on the Freedom Station, WFYL. So let's be heard. I want to remind our listeners that you can participate in the free and open exchange of thoughts and ideas throughout the entire week by visiting MikeGinthemorning.com. What's it called, Philly Chris?
MikeGinthemorning.com.
How about you, Russ?
MikeGinthemorning.com.
Liberty, are you with us?
MikeGinthemorning.com.
You can check out all the shenanigans that Mike G and Philly Chris are up to throughout the entire week. Visit our social media profiles. If you're watching on our YouTube live stream, don't forget to hit that like button and hit the subscribe button. You also got to hit that little notification bell, because apparently subscribing doesn't do much of anything and let you know when our videos are coming out unless you hit that bell. So hit the bell, do it, and tell your friends, tell your family, tell your barber, tell your Uncle Jerry, tell anybody who listen to check us out at MikeGinthemorning.com. I also want to remind our listeners about the powerhouse lineup we've got here at the Freedom Station. Kick off your mornings with Scott Adams. Bring you the Scott Adams Show weekdays from 9 a.m. until 11. We've got Dan the Man Bongino. Bringing you the Dan Bongino Show weekdays from noon until 3 p.m. We've got the headliner, intellectual giant Ben Shapiro, bringing you the Ben Shapiro Show weekdays from 3 to 5 p.m. And finally, we love having him at the Freedom Station family. We've got Michael Knowles, bringing you the Michael Knowles Show weekdays from 5 to 6 p.m. So don't forget to tune in and show him some love. And with that, you know what time it is. Buckle up and enjoy the ride. Hit it, Russ.
Buckle up and enjoy the ride.
We got quite a few members of the Mike G in the Morning family tuning in. We've got Dag Nabbit. Give him a hey now, Philly Chris.
Now, Dag Nabbit. Hey now.
Hey now, Dag Nabbit. How about SM Durso? Durso's checking in. Give him a hey now.
We always love it when Durso's here. Hey now.
Hey now, Durso. How about CB, the one and only creator of cartoons? CB, give him a hey now.
Ladies and gentlemen, CB coming at you live. Hey now.
He's a member of the team. DG checking in. Give DG a hey now.
We always love to have DG here with us. Hey, DG. Hey now.
Hey now. I'm going to kick off the program with some breaking news that nobody else knows. And it is great news. We have a candidate for the Republican Party for sheriff in Montgomery County.
Oh.
And as we know, as supporters of our Second Amendment, it is important to have a sheriff who is pro Second Amendment. None other than Eddie Moy will be running for sheriff of Montgomery County. How do you like that?
That's great news, man. Really? You're not kidding around?
100% breaking news on the air right now. Eddie Moy running for sheriff, got the Republican nomination. For those of you who have been living under a rock or haven't followed the Mike G in the Morning program for very long, Eddie has been a regular guest on this program. He's retired Pennsylvania State Police corporal, and he is a true believer in our Second Amendment. Can't be happy enough that you've got a strong candidate like that in Montgomery County. So if you live in Montgomery County, you need to start spreading the word to all your friends. They need to get out there and vote. It is very important to have a solid sheriff who supports our Second Amendment, and Eddie is that guy. So we'll be having him on the program, in the upcoming months leading up to the election, to hear him talk about his platform, hear his views and how he could change things in Montgomery County. And it's excellent. We're very, very happy for Eddie Moy. Eddie Moy for sheriff.
Good news.
How do you like that? How do you like that? It's
Love it.
about time that you get a good man like him running for office, right?
Mhm.
So we've got a very special guest who's here with us today. We've been trying to get him on the program for a while, and we are honored enough to get him on the schedule for today's program. Rob Packett has had a career in intelligence, and we'll just leave it at that. An intelligence expert, and he's also a concealed carry instructor. The qualifying courses to obtain your license, Pennsylvania, we don't have any such qualification course. But for example, when I lived in Oklahoma, it was a fairly extensive process. They now have constitutional carry in Oklahoma, but for people who want to still get a license for the purposes of reciprocity, you can do so. And when I lived out there, we had to take an 8-hour course with an instructor. Shout out to Mr. Gilmore over the Tulsa Indoor Firearms Range. And we had to take written exams. We had to do a shooting qualification course, and along with other things such as fingerprints down at the sheriff's office, photographs, background investigation. But that qualification course is very important, and many states have that sort of requirement. For example, Delaware being one of them. As we know, Maryland has that requirement. New Jersey has that requirement, and many other states have a requirement that you take a course before getting licensed to carry. CB did us the honors of putting together a beautiful cartoon of Rob and myself, so we'll get that up on the screen.
Awesome, CB.
And that's all you're going to get out of Rob. So, Rob, I want you to thank you so much for joining us. Are you with us?
I am, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you very much.
Rob, I really appreciate you joining, because when I had the opportunity to meet you at a seminar and we started talking, you spoke about how you were qualified to instruct on all of these courses in so many states. And I had never heard of somebody who is an instructor in that many states. How many states is it exactly, or have you lost count yourself?
As far as instructor qualifications, and we're talking here instruction or administration for their, whatever the state calls their concealed carry course. Half a dozen, I think it is, at least 5. I do kind of tend to lose count, and I haven't kept all of them current, but over time, I think it's been about half a dozen. As you note, some states do not require training. Other states accept various forms of training, such as NRA courses. Some of them even accept things like the DD 214, the discharge from the military, as qualifying for training.
So what are some of the states that you've worked in this capacity?
In no particular order, Arizona, Utah, North Dakota, Minnesota, Tennessee.
Just to name a few. How did you end up getting involved with North Dakota, Minnesota, Tennessee? Those are kind of all over the map. It's not like you were in one cluster of the country. That's pretty interesting.
Well, some years back, I decided, actually became fairly passionate about trying to help people get their whatever certification they needed to qualify to carry concealed. So I looked into where I could become an instructor. And I was giving instruction not only in Pennsylvania, where I live, but also in Virginia, because I found I was going there pretty often and shooting there quite a bit. And believe it or not, in New York. I have had a New York concealed carry license. They refer to theirs as a license. And did a lot of shooting and spent a lot of time in New York. And decided I might as well do some teaching there too.
Wow,
And
New York
oddly
had to
enough,
be a real nightmare.
Yeah, that's got to be crazy. I don't know too many people who have that one.
well, New York, from a carry standpoint, it's the New York license, even their license you have to purchase. It is by definition a carry license in New York. The clinker is they put restrictions on the carry. I was fortunate enough to have one without restrictions, so I could actually, carry where I chose to. And I got that because of the training that I was doing.
So what kind of restrictions would you see? Because that's foreign to us here in Pennsylvania, obviously. Would it be like, okay, we understand that you have to carry cash when you go to the bank, so you can carry between 2 and 4 p.m. on Tuesdays so you can go to the bank?
Don't stop for gas.
Yeah, believe it or not, that might actually be a restriction someplace. New York has case law that has decided that administrative restrictions are allowed. I use the word administrative because that's how they are applied. Whoever the issuing authority is stamps your license. In some cases, it's target and hunting. In other cases, all you can do is go to and from the range. In other cases, it is as you suggest. You can carry for business purposes or when you're going to the bank to make a deposit or what have you. It all depends upon what the issuing authority puts on the license.
Now, Minnesota is one that I haven't run into in my practice. I do understand that they're kind of stingy when it comes to reciprocity. So that seems to be one that's often left off of your reciprocity map if you have the typical Pennsylvania, Utah, Arizona. What was that like, the instructor course over there? Was it anything more strenuous than the others?
No, not at all. As far as becoming an instructor, that ran the gamut from for North Dakota, for example. I was what they call an administrator, a test administrator. Basically, that just meant I took you out and made sure you could handle a gun, and there were some questions that you had to answer. Some head work, in other words. But that's all it amounted to. And I didn't have really a teaching role. It was more of an administration type role. In other cases, Minnesota being one, I had to follow more or less a syllabus to do the instructing. Now, I haven't been a Minnesota instructor for a time, so I'm not sure if that might have changed these days, but that's the way it was. Utah, when I first started with them, I think it was very early on in their program where they were certifying instructors. And they had me create my own syllabus and submit that for approval. There were certain modules, so to speak, or areas that had to be covered in the syllabus, but they were all the same sort of thing you would find in for example, NRA basic pistol course, with the exception that I also had to instruct Utah law.
That's interesting. I did notice that when I was taking that course in particular, that you had somebody there who was not a Utah attorney, obviously, and they're tasked with teaching Utah law. And people had many questions about Pennsylvania law when we were in the class. And when I showed up, I was wearing regular street clothes. I'm sitting in the back with the hat on. and every time somebody asks a Pennsylvania law question, the instructor looks to me in the back.
Smart instructor.
Right. I thought I was off tonight, guys. Come on.
Trying to blend in. That's what happens, Mike.
Now, were you an instructor back in the day when you had to go out there in order to get qualified to be an instructor? Because one of our guests on this program, Rocco, was telling us the story about how he went out there to become qualified to instruct Utah. And they announced to everybody who was sitting in the room that starting the following month, you no longer had to go to Utah to get qualified to instruct the course. And they're all looking at each other thinking, we just spent how much money to come out here and stay in a hotel, and we could have just waited a month. Were you part of that old school regime where you had to go in there out to Utah? Or
I was actually part of the older school routine, because when I first started, I became an instructor without having set foot in Utah to become one.
Oh, so
it was later that they did start requiring the instructors to go to Utah, not only initially, but to renew your instructor credentials, you had to go again for retraining.
So you're 2 policies back, but it's similar to the current policy.
Probably like grandfathers and then something like that.
Yeah, I'm sort of great-grandfathered, I suppose you could say.
Great-grandfathered in, exactly.
And now you don't need it anymore, apparently.
And now you don't need it anymore. That's something else.
That makes sense. Just make it more confusing.
How about Tennessee? Tell us a little bit about Tennessee if you can.
Um, Tennessee was another where it was a matter of applying, and I had to show my credentials. And I don't remember offhand what all I had to do to convince them, but even then, I had every NRA instructor certification that a person can get, with the exception of black powder.
Wow. So what sparked your interest in firearms? Is this something that started as at a young age for you?
Very much so at a young age. I grew up in the country in the middle of nowhere in Virginia, and my dad taught my brother and I. We're about 2 years apart, and my older brother before us, but he was 10 years older than us. Taught us to shoot, and my younger brother and I got really, really good at shooting, and we used to go to not only the NRA juniors occasionally, but we could already shoot better than most of the people there. And every November we would go to the turkey shoot sponsored by the American Legion Hall. And when we rolled up in the car, everybody groaned because they knew as soon as we rolled in that they were all vying for third place.
Awesome.
My brother and I didn't know which of us was going to win that year, depending on which of us was on. But everybody else knew that, they were going to be third or lower.
Nice.
So did you continue on with competition as you grew older, or did it turn more into something where you became an instructor?
Well, before I became an instructor in college, I was on the ROTC rifle team, and that was more or less just a continuation of my interest in shooting. And ROTC, where I went to college, the first year was a required study anyway. So I said, why not? I'll jump on the rifle team as well. And that was great experience.
Wonder if it's still required. I would imagine it has to be, but the way things are these days, who knows, right?
It was after my first year, they dropped the requirement at my college.
Really?
Now, yeah. Well, I go back to the Vietnam era, if you will, for my college. And of course, with all the anti-war movement and so on, a lot of universities were dropping that program and more or less pushing ROTC off campus.
Right.
So when you were doing this kind of competitive shooting, it's really sport match type stuff. At what point did you decide, I want to learn more and get more involved in shooting from a self-defense perspective?
That actually came, the formal part of that came somewhat later. I mean, I've always been interested, from a self-defense standpoint, but it wasn't until I guess, I don't know, about 30 years or so ago that I became interested not only in learning myself to be better for self-defense, having the gun handling ability, as well as understanding, what you teach, Mike, and that is the law aspect of it. So that's about time I started not only learning for myself, but also becoming interested in being an instructor. It was about, I don't know, 8 or 10 years after that I started becoming very serious about becoming an instructor myself, primarily to help out anybody who wanted to learn, but maybe didn't have the opportunity to get the instruction. So I felt like I was kind of filling a gap there. Again, I'm kind of passionate about people being able to defend themselves.
Oh, so are we. It's incredibly important, and thank you for doing what you do to help arm good people and get them up to speed where they can be proficient and adequately protect themselves and their loved ones, and also remain safe, because that's an important part of it as well. For those of us just tuning in, you're listening to Mike G in the Morning with The Law Matters, only on the Freedom Station, WFYL. Now, Rob, one of the things you said is that you were raised around firearms from a young age. You had you and your brother going out there shooting as kids, and ultimately the adults groaning when you guys show up in the car because they weren't going to take first or second that day. let me ask you this, because we see a lot of things in the news about how the access to firearms is an issue. They'll talk about school shootings, things of that nature, and the solution always seems to be, that is proposed, that we should create more stringent gun laws. And your story in and of itself seems to suggest that perhaps access to firearms isn't the problem, because when you had younger people exposed to firearms throughout their life, it seemed that they had a better respect for the tool. As for example, you and your brother being around firearms, did anybody ever shoot up the school when you were growing up?
No, I never even heard of such a thing as that. And interesting that you mentioned school and access to firearms. An anecdote that I share pretty often is how I used to take my rifle on the school bus.
Mm-hmm.
Where I
On the
would
actual bus?
sometimes, I'm sorry,
On the actual bus.
on the actual bus. The school bus picked my brother and me up right in front of our house. Again, this is very rural country. I rode the bus 14 miles to get to school. Now, this we're talking about long before there was court-ordered busing. This was just done because I lived in a very sparsely populated county. Well, if I went to school and wanted to go home with somebody else, another kid, to his house, and we were going to do the shooting then, I would take my gun. Bolt action rifle is what I most often took. Sometimes I had an autoloader, semi-automatic, but I usually took the bolt action. So I would take that and a box of ammunition. I would simply remove the bolt from the gun, or even in the case of the semi-auto, I would disassemble it enough to remove the bolt and just keep that in my pocket or in my book bag. Typically, I would hand the rifle to the school bus driver, and he would just prop it up at the front of the bus.
Wow.
And that was a good choice. He suggested doing that. It didn't rattle around that way. When I got to school, I would personally carry this rifle, obvious to everybody, through the schoolyard, through the building, to the principal's office, and left it in the principal's office while I was in school that day. In the afternoon, when it was time to catch the bus, I would go pick up the rifle. And typically then, good principal, he would simply accompany me to the school bus. And he never said anything about doing that because I had the rifle, but I did notice after a couple of times that he pretty routinely did that. So I figured he was just kind of keeping an eye on things, which was fine with me. So I'd go home with whoever the other kid was, and we would shoot rodents or targets or whatever we did at his house.
Mm-hmm.
That's the way it was.
Right.
But let's be realistic here. If you had intention to doing harm under those circumstances, it could have been done, correct?
Well, certainly so. I had everything that I needed when I had the rifle in my possession because I always had the magazine. There was a little detachable magazine. I had the ammunition, and I had the bolt to whatever the rifle was. So some assembly required, but you're exactly right.
I imagine that you were not the only one who had those types of circumstances, were you?
Not at all. In fact, from time to time, the way I became interested in shotgun shooting, in fact, was there were kids that would take their shotguns on the school bus because they were going dove hunting after school.
It really highlights the fact that it has never been more difficult to get access to firearms than it is in this country today. So if there is a problem, it is certainly not linked to the access in and of itself, because when people had that kind of access in those days, you didn't see the issues that are being thrown in our faces today. So there's something deeper going on here within our society, and I feel like people are afraid to talk about that.
I think you're exactly right, Mike. In fact, you might even make an argument that people are a little less safe because with all the restrictions, they're not able to as ably defend themselves because they've essentially in large part been disarmed.
Absolutely. And that's one of the the interesting, sort of unique things about firearms, the right to own firearms, and these gun control laws that are being imposed is that it's very infrequent that you have laws that are being imposed in the name of protection that have such a dramatic negative impact on the law-abiding citizen as you see when it comes to firearms. Because by taking their ability away to defend themselves, on the other hand, you have the criminals who are not going to follow those laws anyhow. And the anti-gun people will often say, well, then why make any laws at all if criminals are not going to follow them? You know, we have all kinds of laws. There's criminals out there. We got to try. What they're not understanding is that by imposing these laws, it's having a disparate impact on the law-abiding citizens because it's getting rid of their ability to protect themselves. Wouldn't you agree?
I certainly do agree. And in fact, I'm a big believer in consequences as long as the consequences are visited upon the perpetrator.
Right. That's an excellent point. That's an excellent point because that's a big reason why people get up in arms when you see these restrictions. I hate to call them gun controls. People call them gun safety laws. I hate that because that's a total misnomer. But when you see these oppressive restrictions that come down, somebody's being punished who did nothing wrong. And it would be like if they said, okay, well, there's too many drunk drivers out there, so nobody can drive anymore.
Get rid of all the cars.
Why? And if you talk to them in that context, if you talk to somebody who's not a gun owner, because they can't seem to understand why we oppose these restrictions, they say, well, you know, don't you want things to be safer? They don't understand because they're not losing anything as a result. If they're not gun owners and it's not something that's important to them, it's no skin off their back. They don't mind. They're not giving anything up. They're not losing anything. But if you put it in a different context, you say, okay, from now on, you can either drink or you can drive, but you can't ever do both, right? There's too many drunk drivers. So if you want to be able to drink, we're going to take away your driver's license. And if you want your driver's license, you can never drink. And their response will typically be, well, why should I be punished? I drink responsibly. And the response is, exactly. That's what we've been trying to say this whole time.
That is the point.
Rob, do you find, have you had people come to you for instruction who are brand new gun owners?
Yes, I have. And not that often because typically I don't think they know how to find me if they're a brand new gun owner. You know, I never really went into the business of instruction, so I didn't like leave flyers around or have ads in gun stores or anything like that. It was really nothing but word of mouth. And when I learned that somebody was looking for instruction, you know, I would step up. So to your point, most of the people that came to me were those that already had established in their own minds they wanted instruction, and somehow we tripped over each other. Most of my instruction came by reference. Somebody referred a gun owner to me.
Tony says gun laws create a safer working environment for violent criminals.
I think there's quite a bit of truth to that, actually, because I do believe there is a deterrent factor. If a bad guy thinks that they are going to be held accountable instantly, seems to me that would be in no small way a deterrent.
For sure. For sure. Criminals laugh at gun laws. They laugh at gun laws. Makes their job a lot easier.
Yeah, it makes it a lot easier.
So we have people making all kinds of comments over here, Rob. CB says that one of the differences we see today is you have social media and you have doctors giving you pills for any little thing. So that's something that I suppose they did not have social media when I don't want to presume your age, Rob, but
I think I've already given that away pretty well.
But in the days where you had guns on the school bus, you didn't have social media, right?
He's actually a time traveler, so we really don't know how old he is.
So that's a difference. And do you think that people your age were less medicated when you were growing up?
Well, I certainly know I was. And from what I know, that was true of my friends too. You know, I hadn't even heard of drugs until I was in high school.
Mm.
So that that I think speaks a little bit to your point. And just nobody I knew was involved with them. Now, that may have been my sheltered life. I don't know, but just didn't see it certainly like you do today.
Mhm. Different times today. Yeah.
Tony Domenico says lack of consequences for young people is a massive issue. That's true too. I mean, we've seen a couple of things on the news lately. There was that one instance where the student attacked the teacher because the teacher took away his. I'm going to sound old. I'm going to call it a Game Boy. It can't be a Game Boy, but something like
It was a
that.
video game. That's right.
Some kind of video
It was an
game.
Atari 2600.
The teacher took away some kind of video game and he dragged her to the ground and beat the daylights out of her. And it was all on tape.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah.
Absolutely crazy stuff. So that's
I saw that video, and I think I would have been inclined to show the student what a flying tackle looks like.
You saw that video, Rob?
I sure did.
What do you think about that situation?
Well, that's completely flipped around. If when I was a kid, if I spoke flippantly back to a teacher, much less became sarcastic or swore at a teacher, you know, I could count on my hide being tanned. You know, the very latest it would be tanned is when I got home. Because as soon as my folks found out about it, the consequences would be visited upon me. Like you say, I don't see a lot of that today. And in fact, I see very often that the parents, instead of visiting consequences on the kids, instead go to the school, the teachers, and try to blame them whenever there's some sort of an issue with the kid. And I don't mean to say that can't happen at all, but it just seems like the balance is completely shifted.
Do you think that children those days, like for example, you talk about your father teaching you and your brother, if you had gotten in trouble in school, would you be scared about consequences at home?
Yeah, and scared might not be too strong a word, but I definitely would expect consequences. And they would range all the way from the belt to being grounded. If I knew if I had misbehaved in any way with that rifle, done anything unsafe with that, I could count on never seeing it again for the longest time. So I knew the consequences would be there if I did something wrong. And I had a pretty good understanding of what was right and what was wrong.
I had somebody on the program once who was from Bucks County and said that when he was a kid, if him or his friends got in trouble, the police would bring you home to your parents because they knew that that was going to be far worse than anything they could do regarding a petition for juvenile delinquency. And that seems to have gone by the wayside. And unfortunately, we've not seen positive results. We got Dag Nabbitt's got a question for you, Rob. Dag Nabbit says, I noticed a sharp increase in the registration price for training over the last 2 years. Is that due to the increase in new gun owners or just due to inflation of everything?
Well, I'm not sure I have a perspective on Dag Nabbitt's question, but I know for my own part, when I was doing more instructing than I am these days, I only charged a student for materials. Now, if it were, for example, NRA course, obviously you had to buy the materials from the NRA, and there was a certain cost associated with that, and that's what I charged the student. If I had to go, some inordinate distance to teach, then yeah, we would talk about some transportation costs, or if I had to spend a night someplace in a hotel room, then we'd talk about that. But as far as my time, I didn't really charge for that. Now, again, I wasn't trying to make a living at it, and I don't begrudge an instructor who's trying to have an instruction business because, I expect them to be paid for what they're worth. But that was just the approach that I took. So I don't know exactly what's in that question. I haven't kept up with what other people charge.
So you're like the Mother Teresa of firearms instruction, in other words.
I'm not sure I quite want to go there. But it's again, it's kind of my passion for helping people, get the training, first of all, know how to safely handle whatever firearms they have, but also develop some skills so they can, heaven forbid they ever wind up in a self-defense situation. But if that's the case, I wanted them to be able to focus their mind on handling the situation instead of having to think through every little thing that they have to do to manipulate a firearm or to put a bullet where they wanted it to go. If they can do that out of habit because they've had good training, then they can rightly focus their mind on the more important aspect of, how they're trying to defend themselves.
We got some great comments over here. We'll start with Rusty Shackelford. He says the worst we ever did to our teacher was hide their desk chair before class. So with that in mind, Rob, what's the worst that you saw being done in a classroom in your time? What was the worst that people would do back then? Because we already established that it wasn't dragging the teacher to the ground and beating the daylights out of them.
Right.
So what was a mischievous type of thing that would be within the realm of possibility? And I think there's a statute of limitations if you're concerned about that.
Sigh of relief here.
Right.
Fact is, nothing springs to mind. I don't really think. I mean, we would joke around with a teacher from time to time, and we might put a cartoon on a chalkboard. And yes, I go back to the chalkboard days. We might put a cartoon on a chalkboard or something like that, but it wasn't even a dirty cartoon, figuratively speaking. It was meant to be funny, and we only did that if we thought there was at least a .99 chance that's the way the teacher would take it. I don't ever remember a negative reaction.
Chris, so, I want everybody in the comments to tell us what's the worst you ever saw in school. In your
time. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Chris, what about you? What's the worst that you've ever seen?
I think probably one of the worst things I ever saw was something that happened to me. Actually, kind of. I don't know if I should say it on the air or not. It's kind of
bad.
Huh?
It was bad.
Well, I was in the middle of like a test, and I really didn't feel well. I was ill.
Mm-hmm.
And I asked if I could leave, and the teacher for some reason was like, no, you kind of have to finish the test first. And it wasn't too long after that I ended up like vomiting all over the floor as I tried to leave the room. So that was pretty bad.
Well, I don't think that's it's like a misbehaving thing. That was
no. But I don't know.
It wasn't like you did it on purpose.
Yeah, no, definitely not on purpose.
All right, lady, you're not going to give me the pass. I'm going to vomit all over the floor on purpose. Yeah, stick with these fingers down my throat.
Yeah,
we had a couple that come to mind. These are sort of rascally type things, I think. But one time we had this teacher in high school, and we didn't think he was quite with it. And it was a very large classroom because it was electronics class. We had all the boards in the back where you had to hook things up and everything. And so we went in the back during one of the classes and we made waffles, and I think we made hot dogs and a bunch of things like that in the middle of the class.
Oh, nice. That's pretty cool.
And the teacher was like, I feel like I smell something in here. That was one. Another one, we found out there was a fire drill, and one of the guys handed out toothpicks to one person in each homeroom. So we'd had every room covered basically. And so when they let us out, the last guy in would have a toothpick.
Okay.
And so when it was his job to close the door behind him, just slid the toothpick right into the lock. So when we came back from the fire drill, no teacher could get into their classroom.
That's awesome.
And we didn't have class until they could get that all squared away.
That's pretty good.
Allegedly.
The old toothpick and the lock trick.
But I think that's still better than I think that's still better than dragging a teacher to the ground and beating them, you know? There's a rascally thing. They're not right. I wouldn't encourage my kid to do it or anything like that.
Right.
Tony says, look into the Maryland juvenile reform bill last year. Basically says no one 12 or under can be charged criminally for many things. Well, there's a little piece there. Cableman F250 says it's common sense and accountability that's missing. Well, that ties right into that, I'd say. And then they're talking about methods of discipline. So here's another question I'm going to have for Rob, because Dag Nabbit says if we got in trouble in school, the teacher just took you out in the hall and took the paddle along. Oh, the teacher should have taken a toothpick along, is what they should have taken.
Yeah, right.
They took a paddle along, and you would just hear a whack.
I did get hit.
That's one way to do it. Cable Man says, yup, belt, grandmother's switch, homemade paddle, the good old days.
You got hit.
Rusty Shackelford, I don't know what kind of childhood he had, says whoopee cushions and thumbtacks.
Good old fashioned fun.
Right.
Sounds like a little bit over the top. Yeah. What about you, Rob? What's you said anything from the I guess you already spoke about it. What about you, Chris? What kind of discipline was there back then?
I mean, I went to Catholic school, so I did get hit. I got whacked with a ruler a few times.
Wow.
I mean, yeah. So that was a thing.
Yeah, I heard about that happening.
Yeah.
But in my case, well, not just for me, but kids in my time, you very well knew that if you misbehaved at school and talking back to the teacher was misbehaving, that was the term for it then, back talk.
Right.
You knew that there was going to be a phone call home. And by the time you got home, the message was already going to be there. So you would have to deal with it once you got home. And that's the way it worked. The schools, I think I vaguely remember my elementary school, there was a paddle in the school office, but I never even heard of it being used.
Paddle.
Just the fact that it was there was.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, that's true, right?
Good point. Yeah, that it was a deterrent factor. Every kid in school knew there was a paddle in the principal's office.
That's funny.
I don't think any of us ever heard of it being used.
Liberty, I hear you piping in. Did you have anything about discipline or about pranks? Tony Domenico says no such thing as pranks anymore. Now it's vandalism and assault. I think there's definitely a lot of truth to that. It's no longer, mischievous, still wrong, but kids being kids, I suppose.
Well, it's certainly what we hear about in the news. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh no, go ahead.
Well, it's just these days, people seem to be so focused on the television and the news and so on. And of course, they want to sensationalize things. So guess what you hear about? When I talk to parents, and I have grandkids now, so when I talk to my kids, I still call them kids, even though they have their own kids. When I talk with them about it, there are things that happen from time to time in the school, but they're relatively benign. But what you hear on the news, of course, is very sensational. So I wonder if there's a pretty heavy skew just because of what gets notarized.
Absolutely. Makes sense. Yeah.
Liberty, did you have something you wanted to say about getting in trouble or discipline?
I grew up in a real rural town, so I don't really remember anything crazy happening. The only thing I've heard in recent years was that now they call the cops. Like if anything happens, they call the cops. Back in my day, it was like the teacher handled it. There was fights, this and that. Teacher would always get in between the fights. That's really all I remember. But now anything, any kind of touching on anybody, anyway, kid, even between kids, cops called. That's all I remember was the big change after I left. And I was always a teacher's advocate, so can't speak for myself.
There you go.
Oh, no trouble for you. No trouble for you. I have heard otherwise. I don't want to out you on the air.
Uh-oh. Treat
Really?
this one out.
There's
I've
only
heard-
one incident that I ever got in trouble. I was so afraid of going to the principal's office. That scared me.
Yeah, that one incident was pretty epic, wasn't
Well,
it?
that was because some kind of bullying going on, and I had enough. So Liberty stood up at the end. But all throughout school,
I think there was milk involved, right?
There you go, Liberty.
Wasn't there milk involved?
Letters. Like I was friends with the teachers. I don't know. I wanted to help them.
Was there milk involved in that incident?
Not for me, from a different girl.
Oh, okay.
Some
So,
girl did something on my behalf, which I told
you
her.
were like the Godfather. You ordered the milk cake, right?
Yeah, it was something with gym class. I don't know. It was crazy. One time I did get caught up with a bad girl in school, like the bad girl, and she didn't like run during gym. She would walk, and I would walk with her, and I was so nervous I was going to get in trouble just from walking because they made us run. I don't know about you guys, but anyway, that's a story for another day. Gym class was hardcore.
Yeah, absolutely.
How about
I
you, Russ?
remember one.
Go ahead, Rob. Go ahead, Rob.
I'm sorry. I remember one punishment that I got in grade school, which to me was actually kind of painful.
Oh,
did we lose Mike?
He'll be right back. He had to do something real fast, but he'll be right back after these.
Yeah, when a bunch of us playing at, I guess, recess, we're out on the playground, and we'd had some rain the previous several days. So, of course, we got around to making some mud balls and throwing mud balls at each other.
Oh, okay.
Well, the consequence of that was writing down, I shall not throw mud balls on the playground during recess 1,000 times.
Oh, there you go. I remember those days. Yeah, I remember having to.
And that to me was about as painful as I ever wanted it to get.
Yeah, it's a pretty good punishment, actually. It's effective.
We probably had snowballs. But I do know one incident my mom, who's a teacher, told me, but I'd have to ask her permission to share it because it was a very strange incident. And it was kind of letting me know like how different things are this day and age with kids. It was like something that was just like really absurd. You know what I mean? And like the thing, and she tells me about the things kids talk about in her class. Well, she's retired now, but she did 7th grade teaching. And it was way beyond their years, way beyond what we would have talked about back in the day. You know, the things she would hear, it is another level.
Yeah.
People can see a lot more stuff on the internet, though, right? Think about it. How did people learn about this stuff? Maybe movies. They got a hold of an R-rated movie that their parents had or something. But now everything's at your fingertips with the internet.
Yeah, it's crazy now.
Everything. Yeah, but it's very, into some strange topics that you just would not hear until kids were in high school, you know, at least. And she's taught 7th grade, so.
Well, somebody had some kind of a freak show idea or way of thinking. Back in the day, chances are you weren't going to meet other people with that same freak show idea or way of thinking. Today with the internet, you know, you can very easily meet like-minded freak show idea way of thinking people.
True.
No matter where they live. They can be in the opposite corner of the country.
Right.
And you realize, we're on the same page. We've got the same freak show idea way of thinking.
We're all furries.
And it all normalizes it, right? Normalizes it. Because we're all on the same page, us and our freak show idea way of thinking club.
Yeah, I have a question for everybody, but being that we don't want to, we don't want to give that much power to the teachers, right? Like to really control our kids or teach them how to think, right? In this day and age, especially if they're more liberal minded. But how do you guys feel about the fact that it's gone to the level of having to call the police every time? Or do you prefer, and people in the comments, do you prefer that the teachers handle things? Like, or do you think that the kids are just too out of control this day and age, so they have to call the cops?
One thing I have
and there's lawsuits.
Liberty. I don't know if you guys saw, there was a clip just the other day of a teacher saying that, like, I forget exactly how she worded it, but she's like, I have several master's degrees. I went to school for education. She's like, I know what's better for people's children than they do. Like, we need to look at the education of the parents. So, that's where we are these days, it seems. Unfortunately, too.
But how is that balance between how the kids are acting up so bad this day and age? So some teachers just can't handle it. So, and plus they don't want lawsuit. Every time I'm scrolling.
You need parents, 100%. Tony is a teacher. Tony in the comments over here. He's a firearms instructor out in Maryland and a teacher. He's been on the program before. He says lots more happens in schools than people realize. Yes, the news media sensationalizes things, but many things do not get out. Things have changed massively in the last 26 years I have taught. So, that's somebody at one place seeing the same thing over the course of 26 years. None of us were in school for 26 years straight. So from a teacher's perspective, you get that where we don't. And the missing link is the parents. So you're talking, Liberty, about calling the police. It's because you don't have that parental discipline that was involved back in the day. Maybe
Yes.
part of it is because people are afraid to get in trouble because the accusations that come out and everything like that.
Yeah.
But regardless of what it is, maybe people are lazy, right? They're leaving parenting to the internet or to YouTube or to the television or whatever it may be.
If I was a teacher, I'd be terrified to discipline any kid. I mean, not allowed even to
It's
say certain pronouns.
Because the alternative is that when the police come in, that kid's going to have a record. It's going to follow him around for the rest of his life. He could potentially have something on his record that prevents him from owning firearms for good unless and until you get relief. Think about that.
Yeah, that's
I got people who come to my office who they had got into a fight in school when they were 12 years old, and they're prohibited from possessing firearms as a result. It's crazy. And these people have gone into the military, been honorably discharged, the whole deal,
Yeah,
wife, kids, jobs. And they're prohibited because of a fight they got into when they were in school when they were 11 and 12 years old. It's insane.
Doesn't make sense.
Yeah, what happened back in the day? Like if you had a bully, handle it yourself, right? The dad would tell the kid, go in there, and if they hit you at first, then you hit back. Now you can get the cops called on you.
100%. I've seen cases where kids defended himself, and the school says we don't allow self-defense at our school. The policy is you put your hands up in the air, you call for the teacher.
They can trump the Constitution, I guess.
Right. Yeah. Anyway, I do
Kyle,
have other things. Rob's been generous with his time. I don't want to, while we do still have him, I've got other things I would like to ask him. For those of us just tuning in, you're listening to Mike G in the Morning with The Law Matters, only on the Freedom Station, WFYL. So, Rob, I briefly mentioned during our introduction that you've got a background in intelligence, and we'll leave it at that. Would you feel comfortable, because we've got so many things in the news lately, I don't want you to comment on anything in particular, but people have questions about intelligence and some general basic concepts and everything. Could I ask you some general things about intelligence?
Sure, go ahead, and I'll answer what I can.
There you go. That works. That works. And if I see some guys in black suits walk into my office and drag me away, I know I asked the wrong question.
Mike, I don't think you have to worry too much because they would come after me first.
Okay. So if Rob goes missing, then we know. I've done it.
Not there anymore.
Totally my fault.
Yeah.
So we see a lot of stuff about classified information these days with all these different politicians, and it's not any one in particular. It's people on both sides of the aisle who are getting called out for the mishandling of classified information. Is there anything about the basic handling of classified information or some basic rules that you could inform our audience? Because a lot of us hear this, and let's face it, we hear they mishandle classified information. We don't know what that means. We don't know what they are supposed to do versus what they're not supposed to do. I mean, some of these scenarios that come in front of our screen would say, I'm thinking you probably are not supposed to do that with classified information. Like my instinct is you are, but we really don't know the distinctions. So is there anything from a general perspective that you can give us?
Yeah, I think so. Strictly speaking, there are 4 levels of classification. Unclassified is indeed one of the levels, and then confidential and secret and top secret. And top secret is the top classification level. You hear other things in movies about classified above top secret, and that's not really the case. Excuse me. There are also things called compartments. And a compartment is sort of a strictly enforced version of need to know. In other words, to get briefed into whatever the content is or the protected information is within a compartment, you need a special briefing to get that. You hear the term, and we've heard it with the presidential documents, Mar-a-Lago and Delaware and Philadelphia and so on that we've been hearing about with our politicians. There's a kind of SCI, it's called, and that stands for Sensitive Compartmented Information. That is very sensitive material and compartmented as part of that SCI. That's a case where there are compartments created to contain that information. The area of intelligence is one of the very key areas where you'll you'll see SCI information. That's what the news reports have been about in Mar-a-Lago and other sites. There being SCI information.
Is that the
Where's
type
the
of
hand-
stuff that would require like a skiff?
Yes, that's another term since you mentioned it. SCIF is a sensitive compartment and information facility. That's what SCIF stands for. What that boils down to is if you're going to have and use and store information, SCI information, you need to have a SCIF that is approved for that storage. And in that SCIF will be safes, for example, that themselves are also approved. There are pretty tough requirements on what a safe has to, what its specifications have to be certified for the storage of sensitive compartment and information. So when you hear about documents being strewn on a closet floor or packed in boxes in garages or something like that, I can guarantee you there's some security people that are going apoplectic over that because it's never supposed to be the case.
Isn't it
First
okay
of all,
when there's a Corvette in the garage, or is that not part of the classification process?
yeah, as far as I know, that was not a classified Corvette.
All right, just want to check.
But as far as the handling it, strictly speaking, SCI information is only supposed to be handled in a SCIF. I guarantee you that garage and that closet were not certified as SCIFs. So the SCI information shouldn't have been in there to start with, if it was still classified. I know there's an argument about did the president, declassify something. But if something is declassified, it has to go through a sanitization process to remove anything of a classified nature from it. To downgrade a classification, the president, a sitting president, can certainly do that, has the authority to do that. If somebody at a worker bee type level wants to have a classification downgraded, they have to go back to whomever originated that information to get it downgraded. And that's done, of course, so you don't get every Tom, Dick, and Harry or Gladys and Irene deciding, hey, I don't like the classification of this, so I'm going to downgrade the classification. To downgrade it, you have to not only remove the cover sheets and so on, you also have to go through and remove all the caveats. Each page of a classified document has caveats top and bottom, which are warnings essentially that there's classified on the page. In many cases, each paragraph of a document has a classification marking, abbreviated, but has a classification marking. So there might be a TS dash whatever, and the whatever would be some indication of what compartment that information is contained in. Long-winded way of saying you have to get rid of not only all those marks so that you've now got an unclassified document, but you also have to go through the information itself, of course, and make sure you delete anything that made that information classified to begin with. You hear the term sources and methods on the news all the time, and those are the really most common reasons for classifying something. We don't want to reveal what our source is because the bad guys will figure out who the source is. As soon as they learn that, they will eliminate the source one way or another.
Right.
Methods.
You saw a lot of that on that television show Homeland, where they were protecting the sources, and sometimes they wouldn't do it the right way, and the source would get got by the bad guys.
Do you have any thoughts, Rob, on, other than the Mike G in the Morning Show, of course, but what programs out there or what networks maybe are the ones that are more accurate from what you like?
It's hard to say. There is, of course, a great deal of dramatization. When I see things that purport to be talking about classified this, that, or the other thing in movies or TV or whatever, can't help but cringe. And for two reasons. Number one, sometimes they're spot on.
Mhm.
The other time I cringe is when they're so off the wall, it's ridiculous. And everything in between, because there's a lot of unreality as well as some things that are indeed spot on.
Right.
Now, you mentioned Homeland. There's a fair amount of tradecraft accuracy in Homeland.
Mm.
I mean,
So if it's spot on, then it kind of has a negative impact on the real deal because it's tipping off the real life bad guys.
it could be, but
Hmm.
ju- you can, with common sense, I think you can pretty readily deduce the things that I have just said. So, I haven't revealed anything.
Right. Yeah. No, this is
But-
just basic stuff. This is, frankly, a good amount of this stuff was taught in military law class in law school, as far as classifications and things of that nature. So it's not something that you can't find in a book or anything like that.
It's exactly right. And you can find, of course, there are whole books written that there have been things written in books about programs that I have worked on, highly classified. There's no way I could talk about them.
Wow.
Couldn't even tell you I'm associated with them. But some of the content is spot on. And I have to kind of cringe at that without letting anybody see in my face that I cringed.
Well, let me ask you this: as far as you said the president can declassify, but it sounds like there's a process that's supposed to go along with it. So it's not just as simple as, if I'm getting this right, they declassified it in their head, and that makes it declassified because they thought the thought. There's something else that's got to go along with it to ensure that if there was anything in there that could potentially lead to harm, that gets taken care of. Am I getting that right?
Well, that's certainly the case at the levels and all that I worked with. And I worked at some fairly high levels and continue to work at some lower than levels that I have worked in previously. Excuse me. I'm going to chase some water here in a moment. But I guess I'm not really up on what the procedure is, if there even is one, or when the president declares something is now all of a sudden unclassified. I would hope there is a process for that. The approval process is the president waved his or her hand. So, but I would hope that there is also a follow-on to that, the sanitization process, if you will.
Gotcha.
One thing you would like to do, ideally, is if you're going to reveal something, declare it unclassified, sanitize it, reveal it, and nobody ever knows it was classified to start with. That would be ideal.
Right.
Now, the fact is, when you're suddenly talking about something that nobody's ever talked about before, it's not too hard to figure out that, hey, they didn't talk about this before because it was protected information before.
Gotcha.
But
but
ideally, you'd like the bad guys not to even know that this thing is classified, because the more that's learned. If I protect something, but I talk about everything that's all around it, then it's a little bit like when you have a jigsaw puzzle and you've got all the pieces around the one missing piece. Well, it's not too hard to figure out what that missing piece is.
Right.
You certainly know the shape of it, but you might also have a pretty good idea of what the image is on it because of what's all around it. Same thing's true in the world of classified material. If somehow you get talking all around something, you reveal an awful lot about what you're not talking about.
That makes sense. When you deal with the situations where you have to go to the source, the person who originally classified it, what happens if that person's retired or they're not around anymore? Can you still take care of it, or does that have to come from the president at that point?
No, it's not quite that onerous. When I say go back to the originator, ideally you go back to the person, but what you really do is you go back to the organization where it was originated.
Gotcha.
And that organization, before they respond, okay, or no, you can't, or you have to do it this way, they will talk to whomever they need to talk to, and perhaps to the individual person that created the classified information. So it's more of a go back to the originating organization and get some whatever sign off they give you that says, okay, you can downgrade the classification.
It would seem that it would be more ideal if you get the actual individual, because perhaps everybody's looking at this thing and can't figure out why it would have been classified, and they're missing something, some kind of context that the individual who came up with that designation knew. And a simple conversation, hey, we're thinking about declassifying this, what do you think? And they're, oh, no, please don't do that, here's why it was classified.
Right.
Well, you're right. That's probably, it's probably fairly extreme for that to be the case, but it could be. I've been involved with some things that supposedly no more than like half a dozen in the U.S. knew about it. So in that case, you kind of do have to go back to at least the small cadre that knows about whatever the project or effort or activity was.
What exactly was that, Rob?
Yeah, stop.
No, I'm just kidding.
Don't even joke.
I'm just testing you out.
That's fine. I take it as a joke, and my answer to that is typically I don't remember.
Right, there you go. I knew he was prepared.
So Rob, Dag Nabbit says, how do all these classified documents get into everyone's garage, basement, house, or wherever? Seems to me if you take them home to study or whatever, would you not take them back where they belong? Well, are they supposed to be at your garage, basement, or house in the first place? I guess that would be my question before all of that. Are you supposed to even be taking these things home in many cases?
We've all read, or at least are aware of, Orwell's book Animal Farm.
Yeah.
About how all the animals are equal, but some are more equal than others.
That's right.
That's the way I think it is. If I were to do something like that, I would have to have an extremely compelling national interest reason for having done it. And even then, I'd probably get beat upside the head with a 2x4.
Wow.
But
you'd hold in the back
when you get at the level of a president or a vice president, even though the vice president doesn't have the authority to declassify something or downgrade a classification on his own authority anyway, it's easy to see where somebody might wink at that. And especially if it's the president doing it, he could easily say, well, okay, if it's a you got me, it's, well, I think it should be declassified. I'm convinced that there is some truth to the fact things in this country are overclassified. I have thought that about things that I've looked at, but that doesn't give me any authority to declare them downgrade the classification.
So could the president declassify and then reclassify? So like declassify it so he could take it home and then reclassify it in the morning when he gets back to the office?
I guess so, but it seems like a trivial exercise.
Interesting.
He just declassifies when he takes them for a ride in the vet. Yeah.
But they are typically supposed to stay in specific locations, so they're not just willy-nilly being brought out to like your hotel on vacation and stuff.
By and large, that's the case. And I say by and large because DoD classification is often handled a little differently. I don't want to say loosely, but there is what's commonly referred to as a classified environment. And what that refers to is a classified working environment. For example, a SCIF is considered a classified environment because the entire facility, however large the facility is, whether it's a room, a group of rooms, a building, whatever, that facility is considered a classified environment. Certainly whenever you have a safe open or something like that. There is also some information that is considered sensitive enough that a safe alone is not good enough. It has to be kept in a vault. And a vault typically is a room that literally has a vault door on it. Wow. And the walls are much stronger, resistant to intrusion and so on and so on. And inside the vault, you still have safes. Or instead of a safe, you might have what's commonly called a bar lock. It's like a very strong file cabinet with a bar you lock in front of all the drawers so you cannot pull the drawers open. So it's less than a safe, but it's much stronger than a file cabinet. And you're only allowed to have those inside of vaults, for example, where you literally have to go through a vault door to even get to the bar lock. So there are all kinds of different ways to handle it. In DOD, and I have some DOD experience, a lot of times classified material is brought out, worked on at a desk that's not in a SCIF. And while you're working on it, it has to be attended. You know, you can't go to lunch with it lying on your desk or something like that.
Oh, wow.
And you have to lock it up when you go home at the end of the day or when you go out to the bathroom or what have you. And typically in that case, you hand it to somebody else who's not going to the bathroom with you.
Mike, look what I found in the stall.
My point is that is not considered a classified environment, but you're still protecting classified information.
Probably should be classified, actually.
Imagine reading classified documents like you're reading the paper or something. Right. So, Rob, I do have another question along these lines. When you get into the mishandling of classified information, Rusty asks, what happens to people who blab classified information to the public? Do they, what kind of trouble do we see them get into? And I guess my dovetail question off of that would be, is there any case that might be familiar to the public that you can think of where it involved classified information being mishandled or leaked or whatever?
There are a number of cases, and I'll try and remember to mention a few of them here. But first, I'll say that the classification all stems from the National Security Act of 1947, which has been amended over the years. Now, strictly speaking, the National Security Act applies to military, not civilians. But in order to do as I have done as a civilian, to work in the community, I have to sign an agreement where I essentially agree that I am going to now fall under the National Security Act.
Oh.
Even though the act itself doesn't require that of me, I voluntarily submit myself to it. And that's the briefing statement you have to sign to get a clearance. And you have to sign a very similar briefing statement to be accessed, the term is, to a compartment. And each compartment, which protects its own area, its own group, if you will, its own pile of information, you have to get a separate clearance into that, but it's a clearance for access. It's not a clearance for level. So I'm subject to the National Security Act, even though the act itself did not make me subject to it until
I'm not aware of any other area of jurisprudence where that's a thing, frankly.
I guess I'm not either, but
where the law applies to a specific group of people and somebody who's outside of that group of people can say, oh, well, yeah, I'll agree that it can apply to me too. I can't think of any other area where that's the case. That's fascinating.
Interesting, yeah.
So basically they'd be punished for violation
though,
of those laws, right?
Exactly right. That's where I was headed, is I'm subject to that act, which carries some pretty heavyweight penalties, up to and including treason, and treason of such a level that capital punishment is an extreme reward for committing treason. It's been decades, of course, since we've executed anybody for that. The last ones I can remember offhand, or during Vietnam, and before that, the Rosenbergs, of course, with they divulged atomic secrets to the, at the time, Soviet Union. If you look up some other names, like Walker, John Walker, I believe it was, his first name John, and his son divulged a lot of Navy secrets and some very, very sensitive programs. And I don't know if he's still serving or not, but he was found guilty and went to prison for it. So that's the kind of thing that will happen. At the very least, the most benign thing that's likely to happen is you forfeit your clearance. They take your security clearance away from you, which of course means you're not going to be able to work on anything classified from then on.
Right.
It also obviously is a black mark that you carry with you, and potential employers may very well get a look at that, so it will affect you the rest of your life. If it's considered egregious enough, obviously there's prison time that might be involved as well. I prefer to avoid those things.
Yeah, I'd imagine. You're not exactly volunteering for the death penalty, right? That's crazy.
Not unless you've got a personal suicide pact going on, and I don't.
Yeah. Are there any other cases that come to mind other than that Walker case?
I'm trying to recall. I don't recall names offhand. But
was Petraeus a classified information case?
I'm sorry?
What about Petraeus? Is that a classified information case?
That was a mishandling case that he and, as I vaguely seem to recall, maybe his secretary or assistant or whatever was also rolled into that. And I don't remember the details of that. I really only knew about it from the news reports. And when I hear things in news reports, I don't really try to file away what I heard because I'm not sure how much I can trust it.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. No, I got you. Interesting. So this is something that it's really cool to talk to somebody who's got this knowledge. It kind of helps people who are listening to be able to understand some of these stories that we hear on the news a little bit better.
Right.
Definitely. We don't get any education on this in school. Do you think that would be a good idea to teach people about this in school, Rob? Oh no, they got him. He's said too much.
No, that's not the case at all. I just really haven't thought about it from that aspect. I do think there's probably some value in educating people to the point that they have the knowledge to kind of screen what they do here on the news, for example. There's a great deal of misinformation out there. There is, I'm convinced, a great deal of disinformation being promulgated as well. And it would be really good if people had enough knowledge that they could kind of recognize BS when they hear it.
Right.
Yeah. Without that knowledge, it becomes difficult to decipher the BS because there's so much of it out there. The BS is plentiful these days.
We're surrounded by it. Do you have any thoughts on like Snowden at all? Like his situation?
That I can see arguments both ways in his case. There is no doubt whatsoever that he violated his agreement. His security briefings, his non-disclosure agreement. And I've signed. Shoot, I have no idea how many of them I've signed, and I keep them. I'm true to all of them.
Yeah.
It's obvious that he did not.
Right.
The flip side of that is, could you legitimately consider him some kind of a whistleblower, notwithstanding that it was classified information he was divulging? And I don't know how to answer that. I don't have the expertise to be able to answer that question.
Yeah, that's the reason I asked.
I'm not an attorney, and I don't know enough about things to really understand what he disclosed and how classified it was. What he disclosed mostly, if not entirely, originated with the National Security Agency. And they're part of the intelligence community, so the same rules and regs apply. And I'm sure he signed briefing statements just as I have, with non-disclosure provisions and so on. He clearly violated those.
Yeah, it's interesting because you hear about some of these people who come out, as whistleblowers or just in general from these, classified programs. And I mean, generally those non-disclosure agreements are binding, like for the rest of your life, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's certainly mine are, and that's a point that is made every single time you sign one. There's a briefing about the briefing statement, so to speak. You get a pretty in-depth reminder of what the commitment is when you sign the darn thing.
That's why I find it interesting. There's certain people in the news, in the past couple of years, claiming to be in certain programs, and I'm like, I don't think they could be talking about some of the stuff they're talking about unless they were given permission to or relieved from those NDAs. But
What are you talking about? Like the UFO stuff that's come out in the last few years?
Yeah, I don't know if you follow that at all, Rob. But like Luis Elizondo's one. I guess he's claiming to be a whistleblower, sort of like Snowden. So maybe that's giving him some sort of protection there. But I don't know if you follow that phenomenon at all. It's been something that's been in the news quite regularly, and I talk about it on the show, and I've referenced people like Dr. Greer, who has had quite a few people from these programs come out, as whistleblowers. But
I mean, they've also declassified a bunch of that stuff over the last few years.
And they have. That's a good point. So, yeah, I mean, and the U.S. government for the first time in recent years has actually acknowledged that, they've had these programs and classify them as either UFOs or UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomenon. It's kind of the new term. But I don't know if you have any thoughts on that or you've been following that at all, Rob.
I've been rather loosely following it. I haven't had time to dig into it or anything. So
yeah,
all I know about it is what I've heard word of mouth or occasionally seen on the news or whatever. So
right.
I don't have any idea.
He watched the movie
calibrate.
Mars Attacks and he watched Independence Day.
right. And I was kind of hoping you could tell us what's on the other side of the moon, but maybe we can do that off the air.
Well, it's another, because Rob was talking about how there's a way to declassify without making a big deal about it. I guess it's kind of tough when it's something as old as these UFO documents and everything.
Right.
But I guess that highlights the reason why it would be smart to.
Well, that's a great idea too, because then you wouldn't even know to do a FOIA on it. Like you're not going to do a Freedom of Information Act on something that's kind of invisible, right? That's probably why they do that.
I don't know. I don't know how to evaluate that.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm just
typically, in general, things are classified for a period of time. In other words, the expectation is that someday,
so many years,
they can be revealed. And the time frame is, there's a general time frame of about 25 years. But that doesn't mean they're automatically declassified in 25 years. What it means is somebody looks at them in 25 years and a decision has to be made one way or the other. Either you maintain the classification or you declare it now unclassified and therefore can be revealed. And that applies not only to intelligence and not only to DOD secrets and that kind of thing, but even other cases. Probably the biggest case in point would be the Kennedy assassination. There's still a great deal of information out of the Warren Commission. Had I don't know if it was called classified, but there's a secret annex, addendum, whatever, to the Warren Commission report. And parts of that have been revealed. In fact, I think some information was just revealed fairly recently out of that because the time frame had expired. There's other stuff that has not yet been revealed. And of course, all the people wanting to study that, in particular, all the authors who want to write books about it, are hanging fire waiting for that kind of thing to be revealed.
What would be the incentive of unclassifying it, though, making it unclassified when you have that 25-year review? Because wouldn't it be easier for them to just say, all right, we're just going to keep it classified? What would be their incentive to let it out?
Yeah, well, like anything else, the easiest thing to do is just don't act. Just ignore the deadline.
Hmm.
But what we're supposed to do in this country, and I'll put it in terms of supposed to do, is be an open society.
Gotcha.
So the real impetus that I think is legitimate is more based on principle. That we don't classify what does not need to be classified. We don't keep things classified beyond when they should remain classified. And basically, we want to be different than North Korea or different than Russia or different than Iran. We want to be an open society where it's the people running the show.
Right.
And the people can't run the show unless they have the knowledge to do it, because you cannot make decisions unless you have knowledge to do so.
So the incentive is basically to do the right thing.
Yes.
Yeah. Gotcha.
I mean, it sounds glib, but that's really, I think, what it comes down to. And I think the founders had that very much in mind in creating the Constitution and the whole founding philosophy and principles.
Yeah. I don't think it's like that now, unfortunately.
Maybe I'm just being jaded. But
yeah, right.
Like, oh, great.
I think we're probably, I hate to say it, but closer to some of the countries you mentioned than the original founders wanted us to be. Yeah.
It's
hard not to be cynical about it.
Cynical. That's the word I was looking for.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Rob, you have been so generous with your time this evening. I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. Is there anything else that you want to tell our listeners before we let you go?
No, I hope I've been able to, provide something that's of interest and perhaps even useful.
Oh, we had a blast. Yeah,
it was great.
If you will be so kind as to grace us with your presence sometime in the future, we would love that. So we'll keep in touch and really appreciate everything tonight. DG says, "Fascinating man." I think that should be the title of the show.
Yeah.
Title of tonight's show is "Fascinating Man."
We'll have to put that in the thumbnail for sure. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks.
Tony
Rob.
says, "Thank you." Everybody in the comments is loving you, Rob. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks.
Well, thanks to everyone, and thanks very much for having me. I enjoyed it.
All right.
Yeah, look forward to you coming back.
All right. For those of us just tuning in, you're listening to Mike G in the Morning with The Law Matters, only on the Freedom Station, WFYL. And that was great.
Yeah.
That was great. I really enjoyed having Rob on the program. Yeah. DG says, would love to hear more. We got to get him on again.
Definitely.
That was fantastic. Man, we really run the gamut there, right?
Yeah, that was great.
It might be childhood's declassified information.
Might be up there with one of our top shows, honestly. In a while, it was really great conversation on so many fronts with his background in the firearms community and all the, states that he's licensed in and all that he's given back, and then of course the little bit he was able to share about some of the work that he does.
That was awesome.
For the government. Was awesome. It's awesome, yeah. Hey now.
Chris Flow's going to come knocking on your door. It's like, hey, I come on the program and you say, this guy's been the best in a while. Yeah, he really was great.
One of, yeah. I've been watching more of his stuff online. He's pretty damn funny, man.
Chris Flow.
Yeah.
We got to get him on.
I wasn't subscribed to all of his platforms from when we had him on the first time, so some of his stuff has been popping up in my feed. Yeah, if folks didn't check out his appearance recently, that was a great show. Yeah,
he's legit, man. He's a funny dude.
I love his stand up. I really hope he comes to Harrisburg. His stuff is getting funnier and funnier.
Yeah,
it's really good.
Yeah, you can tell he's really comfortable on stage too.
Yeah.
I will drag him to a seminar if he comes on the program. We could kind of, for that long form, he and I could kind of get in some of our law school stories and everything like that.
Yeah, that'd be good.
If he comes to do a show in Harrisburg, I will drag him to a seminar.
Mm-hmm.
That would be great.
The Murdoch.
He's going to be the opening act at the seminar. Here you go, Chris. Chris, go warm him up for me a little.
Right? Yeah, you can have a warm up.
He would be a really good MC, actually.
That's a good idea.
Alex Murdaugh is found guilty. Only took the
breaking
jury
news.
3 hours to deliberate, thanks to Christy in
Oh.
Arizona has
wow.
updated me.
Chrissy in Arizona bringing us the breaking news that. Well, so you've been following this trial quite a bit, haven't you, Liberty?
I'm just going to step away for a brief moment, guys. I'll be
Sort
right
of. Not really, because I
Do you
just
know what
saw
it's
that
about?
it was being covered on all the news, and so
What's
I
it about? He allegedly
really know that
killed
much.
his,
I
he's been
believe
convicted of killing his
I
wife.
believe he's now convicted of killing his wife and the son, but I believe he killed the son to make it like for some kind of cover up. And I never really got into it, but it was very much sensationalized. I
So he
think
was
because
convicted
there's
of
actually a
killing the wife
documentary
and
on
the son?
Netflix.
A
What?
documentary on Netflix. So I guess we all got to check.
Yeah,
that out,
I guess
right?
I have to watch that to really catch up on all the details. But apparently, he had a lot of money. He was a lawyer, I believe. Sounds like a plaintiff lawyer.
Hmm.
And he got a lot of huge settlements for clients from what I was gathering. And he would take like an astronomical amount. He had a client that was a quadriplegic, and he, took a huge settlement amount from him too. So, but I'm not big on the true crime stuff. So like, I really didn't get too much into it. I don't know if anybody in the comments knows more, but all I know is he was found guilty, and it took 3 hours to deliberate. And it looks like the sentencing is tomorrow morning. So,
Wow.
not sure if anybody's interested in
He's gonna
watching
be
that.
sentenced tomorrow morning.
Yeah, it looks like that's what Chrissy from AZ says.
Wow.
So
Pretty quick.
we shall see.
I want a couple of months to get my book of life together, as we call
Do we
it.
think it will be life behind bars? Do you think death penalty? Do we think firing squad? I don't know what the options are, so don't.
What
quote
state
me.
is this out of?
I don't even know the answer to that. Why do I want to say South Carolina, but I don't think so.
Oh yeah, you're correct. It looks like South Carolina versus Richard Alexander Murdaugh.
Okay.
Oh wait, no. This was. Oh well, yeah.
It says state versus South Carolina. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, found
Interesting.
guilty of murdering wife and son. But it's
Son. What a sick man.
these types of things, I guess. I mean, you see these cases, but this one was truly,
We'll see what kind of issues come up on appeal, right?
Yeah, this one was truly. I mean, Fox News played it all day long. One of the days. I don't know if it's like multiple days that they played it, but I think it was just one of those intriguing ones for the country. It had power, it had money, it had family line, and so I think that's why. But these things.
So did the Netflix thing come out simultaneously with the trial, or was this around before the trial?
I saw it pop up after I started to hear about the trial. I don't know when it popped up, but yeah.
Wow.
So there's that. Always love when there's breaking news during the show.
Does that feel a little wrong that they're putting out the Netflix documentary side to side with the criminal trial?
I think so, actually. Well, now that I know more of the legal side from talking to you and the other Justice brother, it seems like there's always reasonable doubt. And remember the OJ case, if there's any kind of doubt, if the media sways you in any way, then, a Netflix documentary going on during that, if I was on trial, I wouldn't like that.
Yeah.
Right?
Rusty says it feels a bit sus. They had a whole ass documentary ready to go.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know the guys I can't speak for him. He's probably now he's a horrible murderous person. He was convicted, but it's kind of strange. They're making.
DG says PA man had explosives at Lehigh Valley Airport and got caught.
Yeah, I heard something about that. Yeah, like what are you thinking?
It's like, you can't bring a bomb on the plane. When did that start?
Yeah, is that like a new thing, or
the comedian said that?
Somebody had an AR-15 too, I believe, that they tried to get in the airport recently.
Yeah, that's also a good idea.
Oh, that was at Newark. That was at Newark, and he was a person not to possess, according to the article. Person not to possess tries to get on the airplane with a rifle and a fake marshal badge or something like that. Yeah.
That's always a good idea, yeah. I'm sorry.
Wild.
I had a few stories in the doc.
Oh yeah, like what?
Like what? What did I have? There was a strange story that came out that there was no consensus on the no, not zucchini, on the turnip
The
origin.
turnip, yeah, where it came from, right?
I thought that was interesting story.
Yeah, because first you started to see stories that a couple of agencies and Jimmy Kimmel lost his mind over this.
Yeah, how many things are like turning out to be, the opposite?
Well, a couple of agencies say probably a lab. A couple say they're not sure, and 4 of them say still going with the other theory, the original
Probably
theory.
important to figure that out, government. It's probably a
I'd
little-
say so, but the problem is that it's not as simple as they
Yeah.
came out there at the beginning and said, "Oh, we're not sure." It's like, no, this is what it is, and if you say otherwise, we are going to censor you completely,
Mhm.
and you're not allowed to say it, right?
Right.
That's the problem.
And
Yeah.
right. And
That's
speaking
the
on
censorship. Yeah.
If you say otherwise, you're a science denier, and now 2 agencies are. It just shows the importance of not having censorship like that.
Mm.
And these
and another
were,
thing
in
we
fact,
had to
they're obviously at least legitimate. I don't know. What do you call them? Theories, right?
absolutely. And if we don't know our enemy, we don't know what people are doing. We don't know what could happen next. I think that that's like number one thing we should be.
Yeah. Well, if that's what happened, then it's like, hey, maybe we should figure out how to not let this happen ever again, because it kind of ruined the entire world.
Well, the agencies made a lot of money on the drugs. We know that. So,
What's the
and
matter?
the
You
second
didn't like
thing,
the stuntman shirt?
Sorry, that you know what it is? That the black shirt was making
What?
me, it was like messing up the camera. My face was so white.
He
It
changed.
drive me crazy. So
he
I'm
changed
doing
during the
neutral
show.
favorite work. Yeah. So everything's okay. I apologize.
Really, Chris, you're funny.
I'm okay now.
And speaking of code words, the
Change.
other code word that we had for Darfado.
Oh yeah, right.
Well, apparently there's a big lawsuit going on now against Fox News that apparently during the depositions it came out that some of the really big time hosts on Fox News knew in quotes, I say, I can't pull the article up for the exact wording, but my summary from what I remember is like, I think it was like Sean Hannity, Tucker was mentioned in the article. They had, I don't know which one had known, but some of the hosts had known and had shown evidence that they believed it was not true, that there was Darfado. And yet they went on and the owner of Fox knew it as well, but nobody squashed the story because for viewers or whatever, because they would lose Trump voters. So they're saying that they technically kind of knew in their conversations that it was not true and that they believed that there wasn't Darfador, but they were still reporting that there was. However, that's so nuanced, isn't it? I mean, you could believe. So I think they're fighting against it. And I don't know if it's at this, which court is it at? Can somebody Google that?
Hold on.
Okay.
Hold on.
Let me just Google it so I'm getting it right. Hold on.
First of all, none of these folks are reporters, are they? Are these news anchors we're talking about?
Yeah, news anchors.
I mean, who is really doing any real journalism?
No. The people you mentioned are not news anchors.
Yeah.
What?
They're
Oh,
hosts of opinion programs. They're not news anchors.
here it is. Murdoch acknowledges Fox News hosts endorsed election fraud. Robert Murdoch, the conservative media mogul, spoke under oath last month in a $1.6 billion defamation lawsuit against Fox by Dominion Voting Systems. And it says that he basically promoted the false narrative, hosts for his networks promoted the false narrative that the 2020 election was stolen from former President Donald J. Trump and that he could have stopped them but didn't. Court documents released on Monday showed they endorsed Mr. Murdoch said under oath in response to direct questions about the Fox News hosts Sean Hannity, Jeanine Pirro, Lou Dobbs, and Maria Bartiromo, according to a legal filing by Dominion Voting Systems. But something stuck out to me at the bottom, which was technically, like, you can't really say what their true opinion was, right? Just from, I mean, isn't it kind of like an opinion thing? Like you can truly think that there was Darfur Dog because nobody was really ever looking into it, right? How can they say 100%?
Well, that one movie too, the 2000 Mules or whatever.
Donkeys.
Yeah, right. Donkeys. Thank
asses. I thought we were calling it asses.
2000 asses. I mean, come on. Like, what isn't really different than what's been shown to us as the truth, right?
Okay.
I've had enough.
Its lawyers for Fox News, which filed a response to Dominion in court on Monday, argued that its commentary and reporting after the election did not amount to defamation because its host had not endorsed the falsehoods about Dominion. Even Mr. Burdock stated otherwise in his deposition. As such, the network's lawyers argued Fox coverage was protected under the First Amendment. Far from reporting the allegations as true, hosts informed their audiences at every turn that the allegations were just allegations that would need to be proven in court in short order if they were going to impact the outcome of the election, Fox lawyers said in their filing. And to the extent some hosts commented on the allegations, that commentary is independently protected opinion.
Sounds fair to me.
Right. I mean, what? You're not allowed to talk about anything?
That's very Orwellian, 1984-ish. We were talking about Orwell earlier, right? I mean, we're pretty much living in those times now.
Who's the administrator on this thing? Because we had this comment on the screen, and I have a feeling it was Russ that took it down. Is Russ? Yeah.
What?
I have the control over here, and so does Russ. And
Russ
every
trying
time
to hide
I put the Finland's comment up, he keeps putting it back down. It says, "Is Russ ever gonna box Mike?" It's been like a year now. And Russ keeps taking it off the screen every time I put it up.
Talk about suppressing.
Yeah, right.
Educated citizen. When's the fight gonna be?
Yeah, it's been a while. We need to make that happen. Yeah. I think one of our listeners actually knows a real promoter, like a fight promoter. Maybe we could make some calls and make something happen.
We have serious stories, but at the end of the day,
charity.
listeners want to see the boxing match.
It's for charity. And the crazy thing is that since last year, I'm up quite a few pounds and Russ is down quite a few pounds. So we're almost in the same weight class.
It's becoming a better matchup in a lot of ways. Yes.
Yeah, I think now's the time.
Do we have a comment from Russ?
The time is now. The time is near. Let me be so very clear.
Russ, comment?
Russ is being quiet.
He's there. Himself. He's there because he's taking the comment down every time I put it up. There's literally no way that he's not by his computer.
Russ, haven't you learned from Conor McGregor? You have to hype it up to get more viewers. What the heck?
See, he took it down again. He's definitely there. He is simply not speaking. If you look up chicken in the dictionary.
Oh no, them fighting words.
That's funny.
The Finland says I'll bet $50 that Run wins. So now I'm fighting the guy from Run DMC.
Yeah, who's Run? Is there a third fighter?
I have an idea. Mike, how about you fight Russ on VR first and see how it goes and then bring it through.
Yeah, that's an idea.
I don't know if you can do that. The game, I was looking into that because my Justice brother and I are supposed to play a football game against one another on the VR headset because apparently you can do it with football, but from what I looked into, you can't do it with the boxing VR. So if any of our listeners have any insight as to that, as to whether we can do VR boxing,
I would default to either CB or maybe even Ross.
Yeah, we got to get some technical experts on there.
Yeah, can we do virtual reality boxing? That was my favorite thing to do. Go to the arcade. They used to have the video game that was boxing. You put your hands in there. Did you ever see those games?
Oh yeah, I used to play those back in the 1800s.
And the 1800s. But I loved it because I could go in there and I could just fight people. Right. Like the older kids, Yeah.
Now some of those old games are pretty impressive. The way that
CB says you can, guys. And you can stream it here.
Oh, wow. So which game, CB, if you know, which game is it that we can fight one another on the VR? Because I don't think you can do it with Thrill of Fight. Thrill of Fight is my go-to right now. Chris, did I put you on Thrill of Fight? Did you try it?
Yeah, I tried it. Thanks for letting me try it. It was a good reminder that I needed it and how out of shape I am.
I go 10 rounds at least once a week on that.
I'm like,
thing.
I'm fighting air right now and I'm having trouble, you know.
There's definitely a different intensity
Yeah.
when you have somebody in front of you trying to punch you in the face, right? You
Oh,
can do all the
totally.
shadow boxing and heavy bag work
It
you
was
want.
a good work. I mean, it was a good like miniature workout for the 30 seconds I did it, and I'm glad I laid down right after.
Did anybody ever do that stupid boxing game arcade when you're walking on the boardwalk where you have to hit the thing and you like almost dislocate your shoulder?
There's so many videos of people doing
a guy who ended his baseball career because of one of those things.
Really?
Oh.
Ended his baseball. He was a big league pitcher.
Oh, that sucks.
One of the most talented guys I've ever been around. This dude is in the big leagues.
Ouch.
And ended his career.
Like blew out his shoulder or something.
Blew out his shoulder.
Oh boy.
I think what happened was he
Let's
went to
rock.
hit it and it wasn't plugged in, so it was completely stationary and didn't go up.
Oh gosh.
And he just tore everything in his shoulder.
Oh, that blows, man. Oh, that's crazy. Yeah.
Rehabbed enough to get back to where he needed to be. Got signed with a big league club.
Mm-hmm.
Contingent upon a physical. Mm-hmm. Goes in with Dr. Frank Job, and did not pass.
Oh,
I probably shouldn't have said that. I should not said the name of the doctor, but I don't think he's even alive anymore.
Yeah, well, that's unfortunate. You hear about those really weird freak incidents, though. People who, like I've heard, the horror stories about people who are surgeons and they're using their snowblower and they go to clean out the top of the snowblower and not realizing there's a spinning second stage in there and mangle your hands. So don't do that. Don't put your hands on a snowblower.
No. Oh, the other news was that the Chicago mayor's out, right? We spoke about that over the weekend.
Yeah, she got voted out.
Yeah.
Crazy eyes. She's gone.
And people called her Beetlejuice, and I didn't know why.
You don't know why?
I didn't know why until somebody compared to Side by Side.
Oh, okay.
No. I don't think Liberty understands which Beetlejuice. It's not the one from the movie, right?
Oh, Beetlejuice. I used to watch that all the time, like the Beetlejuice.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's not what the.
We'll have to send you a meme or something.
Yeah. Wait, is there another Beetlejuice out there?
How would you describe it, Mike?
Guys? Beetlejuice, there's only one Beetlejuice. I know.
From the other radio show. From the knockoff Mike G show. There's a radio program out there that's a cheap imitation of the Mike G.
I'm missing something.
I don't know if you can see this, though. It kind of looks similar, right?
CB's got it.
CB's got it.
Well, I saw the eyes and I was like, oh yeah, like the wide eyes, and you know what I mean? So I was like, oh, okay, I guess
CB's got it on there.
Howard Stern Beetlejuice. Oh, okay. Oh, and then the other news was that Biden admin gives federal agencies 30 days to ban TikTok. I believe it was off their devices.
Oh yeah. That was in the news, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So you can't use them on government phones.
Probably. Look at the terms and conditions on that. You're
Russ was like that. The Biden administration is giving federal agencies 30 days to ensure.
Out of here.
Guys, the Biden admin is giving federal agencies 30 days to ensure they do not have TikTok on any federal devices and to ensure vendors play by the same rules, according to new guidance on Monday from Office of Management and Budget Director Shalanda Young. Yeah. So there's that. I don't think anybody's surprised.
Not really. I'm surprised they didn't do it sooner, really, but
Yeah. And the other thing I thought was interesting that it's kind of like 2-week-old news. So sorry, John, but did anybody see the tweet from Marjorie Taylor Greene that she called for a national divorce type of thing, which we had talked about in the show before, where basically the states split because we have irreconcilable differences. So the Republicans or conservative states go one way and the liberal Democrat states go the other. And I always found that an interesting concept. What does everybody in the comments think? I know we always say which states would last the longest, and we
Oh,
say clearly the conservative.
John Bruno talked me right out of that real quick.
Why?
So, response when I said that, I was like, why are we doing this? We just have such different pages in this country. You know,
Oh, I remember.
what are we fighting for? We're never with them. We're never going to compromise on the Second Amendment. We're never going to compromise on, okay, you can kill a baby. And they're never going to compromise the other way around. So there is no viable compromise with those things. So why don't we just split up? And Bruno said, you're not understanding. It's about control. We just want to be left alone. They want to control people. And if we split up, they can't control us. That's not what it's about.
Right.
So I tend to agree with them. I think that makes sense. Everybody's in agreement. All right. Anything else, Liberty?
I think that was it. Philly Chris had put 2 articles up there.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we can save them for next time or something. It just has to do with the UFO stuff, and we can probably talk about it next time. But I think there's going to be some more information coming out, as I mentioned, and then the movie that Dr. Greer is releasing will be coming out on the 14th. So if anybody has not seen,
we got to get that dude on who sent me that picture if he's willing. I mentioned it on the air, right?
Which
we were
one?
on the air, I think last week. He sent me a picture of some UFOs over in the Poconos.
Oh yeah, right. Yeah, that would be a good person to have on. Sure.
UFOs in the Poconos.
Yeah.
I have one more thing.
It wasn't like when Russ sent it where you were like, yeah, that's what are those things called? The Chinese lantern or something?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Chinese.
I mean, there is one clip in the doc if you want to play it or not. The big thing I mentioned a long time ago, and I did mention again recently, was the whole narrative. What the narrative is going to be with the whole, UAP, UFO thing. And that fighter pilot that witnessed the Tic Tac did an appearance recently on CNN, the Clown News Network. And I thought it was interesting that he mentioned certain things in the interview that would have been concerned to me, leading up to implying that it's a threat, like a national security threat. So I don't know if you want to play that or not, but it's in the doc if you want to check it out.
But even more important, does Philly Chris look like he shaved even more this time?
I'm on a different computer tonight, so I apologize. That's why I was getting frustrated earlier, because the lighting was so wacky. But I don't know. And I have the green screen up behind me that Mike gave me. Thanks again, Mike. So maybe that's it.
Philly Chris is clean shaven.
Right.
Yeah, I did shave up again.
No more beard.
Nice.
Maybe. We'll see.
All right.
I'll grow it for the fight.
He'll keep you guessing.
Yeah. I'll grow it for the fight between Mike and Russ.
Nice.
CB said he sent Mike a text. Whenever he sends Mike a text, it means there's maybe a new updated image.
Oh, thanks for the
phone's
kind word,
dead.
CB. I'm trying.
Phone's dead. Sorry.
All right, we're gonna play that clip from Philly Chris.
You want to play it? Check it out.
CB said, "Looking sharp, Philly."
Thanks, brother. Thanks for all that you do, my friend. I'm trying. I'm taking some new supplements.
Part of the team.
Right.
Nice.
Mike and I talk about nutrition off the air. He's giving me some good tips too, so I owe some of it to Mike.
Nice.
Are
we playing something or?
Did you want to play? I don't know. Russ is probably making.
Russ probably fell asleep a long time ago.
Where's our? When are we getting the new producer?
I have no idea what you guys are even talking about.
Oh,
you haven't been listening, apparently.
No, I have been, and I looked at the dot. Yeah, this wasn't here before.
It was there before the show started.
It absolutely was not.
It was, because I haven't touched the doc since before.
I didn't get it, CB.
Maybe it was telekinesis, actually. I've been working on
You might have sent it to the group chat with just Philly and Mike. I'm not seeing it come through. Philly Chris said to play a clip. Okay.
Oh, there you go. All right.
What, the whole thing?
Whatever. It's not that long, or when you want to comment on it or stop at some point, whatever Mike thinks. It's his show.
Yeah, he'll pipe in.
There we go.
Thanks for listening to the program, though, Russ.
I know. Russ, thanks for it.
It sure has cured my insomnia.
Yeah,
okay.
I'm gonna.
All right, I'm gonna post it after this. So just look in the doc for a new image. You guys will like it.
Okay.
I'm going to post it in the
That
doc.
Chinese balloon that floated across the continental U.S. got a lot of attention, and somehow it eclipsed other weirder unidentified flying objects.
What, your mom? Burn.
Roger. They're shooting. Did you box moving target? No, I took an auto track. Oh, okay. Oh my gosh, dude. Wow. Let's fly.
Former Navy fighter pilot Ryan Graves has a new article in Politico titled, "We Have a Real UFO Problem, and It's Not Balloons." He joins me now. Ryan, I'm with you. I mean, you've seen weirder things than a Chinese balloon while you've been in the sky, yes?
Was it a Puerto Rican balloon?
Certainly. We've seen things that we haven't been able to explain as simply a balloon. And as we've been talking about the various objects that have been shot down over the U.S., there's been a pretty clear bifurcation between what we've been calling a Chinese balloon and what these other three objects are. And while we don't know what they are, the fact of the matter is we should know what's above our head at any given time, whether it's a national security issue or whether it's a scientific question. We need to figure out what's above our heads.
That video that we just showed, was that from your squad?
Yes, that was in 2015 while we were aboard the USS Theodore Roosevelt off the coast of Jacksonville, Florida. We were doing training missions, preparing for our combat deployment. We recorded that object as well as other objects that were operating in our vicinity on a regular basis. And we simply didn't know what they were, but we did know that they were a safety hazard for our air crew and for our training missions. And we've been looking for the right way to report and deal with those issues ever since. With the Americans for Safe Aerospace, we're going to be pushing legislative action to ensure that the proper policies are in place so that pilots and aviators, both in the military and in the commercial markets, feel comfortable reporting these things, whether, again, it's a national security issue, we need to pay attention to make sure there's not security gaps, or whether there is something unknown, we need to inquire on that.
But Ryan, what was that thing?
That's what we're still trying to figure out. So what we know is that it wasn't
unidentified, you dope.
We're fairly certain that it's not here at this point, but it still remains in the unknown bucket. And the primary issue here is that there are enough things that are in that bucket of unknown that the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office within the DoD and various senators and Congress.
So what you're saying is it was a
congressmen and
bucket?
women are looking into this matter from the angle of national security in a way we haven't had before. With the recent shootdowns, we can see just how serious of an issue it is. Even if they are just balloons can still be a national security issue when they're overhead our national security facilities and airspace.
But these things that you've seen, and in fact, I should let everybody know, you saw them a lot. This wasn't just a one-off once in 2015. You saw UFOs.
15. This is from 15. This is the one that we saw on the news years ago.
Yeah, he's just.
And so CNN decides, let's talk about it now.
I think they played.
Not that we were just seeing them out there and somewhat identifying something in the distance. We're using a multitude of sensors on our aircraft and also distributed across multiple aircraft and different platforms that are detecting these objects within a sensor network. And so when we then correlate those radar tracks with our infrared camera systems and eventually moving closer to detect them with our eyeballs, we have high confidence in those track files and what we're experiencing. And what we're experiencing are things that we're really not sure what they are at the end of the day. They're performing a number of behaviors that we don't recognize, such as the ability to stay stationary in very high winds with no lifting platforms, no surfaces, but also to maintain speeds of 0.6 to 0.8 Mach, which is upwards of 350 knots. And they can do that for many hours on end. We don't have the ability to do that in our aircraft. We simply don't know who's operating these or what their intent are.
I think we have another clip of one from your squadron of them seeing it, as you said, in high wind and operating differently.
It's rotating. Oh my gosh. They're all going against the wind. The wind's 120 knots from the west. Look at that thing, dude.
And so when you say that you want to get to a point where people feel comfortable reporting them, do people not feel comfortable reporting these sightings?
They still don't. And I'll only speak within the aviation community, but it's a big risk to go out publicly on this topic. At the end of the day, if you're going to highlight yourself, at least in the military aviation communities, for something like this, there's very little upside for you. We're very busy aviators in the U.S. Navy, Air Force, and the military in general are very busy just doing their regular job, and they're not equipped to go out and do research on these mysterious objects. On the commercial sector, people work for a very long time in a single career at a single company, and they're a single signature away on a medical evaluation to say they're unfit for flying and to lose that career. So there's really just very little motivation to speak publicly about this, especially when it's been communicated by their employers and historically that this is a somewhat off limits topic.
Mm-hmm. And last, Ryan, do you have a theory on what these are?
Well, I have a theory of what
mom.
they're not. And I do have a method, I think, of trying to figure out what these are. We know that we can detect these objects. We are starting to recognize as a government and as a society that we have an obligation to figure out what these are to ensure safe flying. And so I think we can figure it out. I think that is an answerable question, although not quite yet.
Ryan Graves, thanks for sharing all this with us. It's really fascinating. And obviously we do need to get some answers.
Look at how smiley she is. She's like, yep, this is what I'm doing with my career, talking about UFOs.
How about it? So anyway,
look at that smirk.
And the guest is like Philly Chris.
Pretty much.
Getting all chatty now, Russ, huh?
Yes.
Yeah. Russ is just he's a chatty troll.
But
Scott says a ramjet and scramjet can do those same Mach speeds.
they can, but the whole hovering, like the stationary thing and the amount of G's these things pull, it has to be some sort of gravitational propulsion craft. And, I think that's what we'll hear more about in the future. So,
Dag Nabbit said, is this classified information?
as far as I know, yes.
Why is Russ putting it in Word? I love using Word too. CV, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Everything I do on Word. I mean, not Word. Paint. I love Paint. I love Paint. Sorry, I had to put that. What are you doing?
Somebody needs to take control away from us.
That face she's
That's the face. Like every time Philly Chris brings up aliens, just put that face up.
Oh.
And for the record, I'm not bringing up aliens. I'm bringing up the crap.
Yeah, I know. I just like saying alien.
Yeah.
Russ, when you're done with this, if you go to the doc, there's a new image from CB.
You got a new image in there? Thank you, CB.
When you're done with this strange thing, Russ is having a time of his life.
You all right? You all right over there, Russ?
Yeah, I'm fine.
We haven't heard from him.
And help over? Or?
Oh man!
This is the face of CNN.
I think all the cheese went to your head.
Who are you calling a cheesehead?
Yeah.
Hey, why is it showing up like that?
It's
That's so weird when it does that.
Oh, look at this. That was quick.
It's because of us.
I use dark mode because I'm not a masochist.
That's pretty good, CB.
You guys look like the Men in Black.
I think CB does more producing during the show than our producer.
Yeah, I like Philly Chris's new style. Like
new
his hands in his
producer.
pockets.
Yeah,
Got
right.
some skinny jeans on. Philly
Oh,
Chris
look at that. Thanks, CB. I'm liking it.
CBL new producer.
I have to thank my high school boyfriend for the shirt. He gave that to
Oh
me.
my God.
Yeah, they look like
Shout out to Stu. He's probably on the treadmill listening right now, by the way. He usually listens on the treadmill at the gym.
You could use a treadmill, Chris.
Yeah.
Oh, now maybe Russ wants to fight you, Chris.
Yeah, let's do it, Russ. I'll drive to your house right now. I do know where you live.
we should do a three-way dance. It's a three-way fight. We all fight each other.
That'd be awesome. Let's do it. Can we use our feet?
Fists, feet, elbows, and knees.
All right, perfect. Count me in.
What do you say, Russ?
Trying to
Oh, I'll never agree to it.
see how we get so quiet again.
Hey, I know, right? Come on, man. You outweigh both of us by a lot.
Yeah, Russ, maybe like you should
By
probably
a
like
lot.
slam them, Russ. You should
Oh
be
my
more
goodness.
confident in yourself.
It's time to kick ass and chew bubble gum. And I'm all out of gum.
Oh my god.
Too funny.
Let's rock.
Oh, that's his acceptance of the three-way dance.
I think so. Yeah.
Now he's bringing his producer skills.
You've agreed. You finally agreed to it.
I believe that's legally binding, right? We've got
I think
witnesses.
so. You're a lawyer, so you know best.
Let's rock.
We had an oral contract,
Good enough for me.
That's not oral.
and it's all on tape.
CB can be the ref. You want to be the ref, CB?
Oh, that would be great.
Yeah.
That would be great.
Groovy.
You said we got a promoter who's been listening.
I know one of our listeners does know someone who's a promoter. I'll reach out and see if they can get in touch with that person. So maybe they could help us out a little bit. Yeah.
Off your bike tires, Russ.
That'd be cool.
I met the person briefly at a family event. So
Am I allowed to use a chair?
maybe. I say we include chairs. What do you think, Mike?
Tables and ladders and chairs.
Only
Yeah.
Dr. Val.
TLC in here.
Oh,
Only
my.
Dr. Val can bring the chair. Remember that one episode where
Dr.
Dr. Val?
Val.
That was hilarious. Lily's
Dr.
face.
Val. Miss Dr. Val.
You call that skills, Liberty. I can have AI face over Mike and Philly's face while they're doing the live show.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
you should do that.
Wow.
You should do that.
Well, if he takes over as
Russ
producer,
is
you should go on
sucking-
vacation again. Do you have any trips to Ocean City planned anytime soon?
No.
We should tell Russ you've won a vacation to Ocean City. You get all expenses paid.
Get that crap out of here.
We'll get CB in to fill in again.
There
I mean,
we go.
only started
Wait,
using-
hang on, CB. Can you make Mike into a pickle?
I'm sure he could.
Zucchini.
Maybe a zucchini would be.
Yeah, zucchini.
would
Put
be
like
more
Mike's face
appropriate.
into a zucchini.
And make Chris a potato because he's bald.
There we go. That'd be pretty funny.
Oh my gosh.
Well, I don't think zucchinis have hair, Russ. I don't know what kind of zucchinis you've been eating. If you've been eating zucchinis that have hair.
CB said, "Say no more, Russ." I see Mike's face in a pickle coming.
And you do, wait, hang on.
It
Can you
doesn't
do
make
it
sense
now?
though. Russ's
say that on the air.
zucchinis. Russ's
Russ eats
zucchinis have hair.
Wait, this is interesting because a zucchini and a pickle are,
Russ
there's
eats
subtle
zucchinis with
differences.
hair.
Russ eats hairy zucchinis. I don't know if we can get away with that.
Ew, very zucchinis. On Earth.
Well, he said that I'm a zucchini, but he said Chris is a potato because he's bald. And they said, hold on a second. Zucchinis don't generally have hair.
Yeah.
Oh man, I'm getting a headache from laughing so
He's
hard.
trying now, he said. Oh my goodness.
Oh, that's awesome.
Oh
I don't
no.
know how he does this stuff so quick. He must have some AI going on.
Oh.
He's gonna make a zucchini with hair.
Maybe he's an
Cartoon or realistic? He's a
I think he's
cartoon.
an alien who's got some kind of tech that we don't know about yet.
Yeah, he's got something going on over there.
Stevie.
All I know is he seems to know what he's doing.
He's definitely but he's good with logos. Like he knows how to do logos for real. So he's
Good, yeah.
he's got that whole artsy tech thing going on. He's like literally putting Mike's face in a pickle right now, or zucchini.
So funny.
I think a pickle sounds funnier. I don't know why. More funny.
Pickle Mike.
Mike and a pickle.
Pickle Rick.
Okay, never mind. I was gonna say Philly Chris with his head shape would look really good in a pickle too, though. Because I can see it.
That's terrible.
I guess it would work.
Well, I mean, it's what I mean, because it's round and shiny.
My head is kind of
Yeah.
round.
You're
Gotta put more lotion on it. I'm sorry, I had to change my shirt though. The lighting was driving me.
You're giving Stone Cold Steve Austin vibes.
I'll take it. Did he do it already?
Oh, that's Russ doing that.
Oh, that's Russ.
Russ versus CB. Here we go. Round 1.
Fight.
Mm.
There's Russ's pickle.
Yep.
Lame.
Or is it a zucchini?
What do you mean lame?
Lame.
He's gonna beat your
I'm
ass.
assuming CB's got to send it to me.
Bad one.
And then I'll put it in the
Russ,
doc.
Russ is the paint version of producers. CB's the Photoshop.
Right.
Hey, don't knock paint, man. Paint got me through some
Rita
jobs.
says Russ can be a jar of mustard.
Yes.
That means I'm not the
Who is still there in the chat that uses paint? Anybody?
CB is actually helping us out. We might have Mike G in the morning shirts and mugs soon.
Oh yeah?
Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah. We do have to work on getting the mustard, but
Are you gonna send me one, Mike?
we do a mustard subscription service.
I made a Mike G in the morning theme song once, and it was
Like
shut
the
down.
Jelly of the Month award, but with mustard.
Yeah, Mike G in the
Stevie,
morning.
I'm on standby.
Mustard subscription
Mustard
service.
of the month.
The mustard of the month. That's actually great. That's what we should call it. The mustard of the month.
Monthly mustard.
No.
Wait,
car magnets.
EG wants car magnets. We could do.
I want a car magnet.
That's a good
would be
idea.
great. Imagine somebody like rams you in. because
Russ,
they
do you have
just-
any room on the back of your car for magnets?
Yeah, I can scrape some old ones off.
Wait, Russ has magnets? Oh my gosh.
Oh, tons of bumper stickers.
He
Yeah, there's
does?
been studies about
Tons and
people.
tons and tons.
I would picture that. I could totally picture Russ as a bumper sticker guy.
Some psychiatrist did a pretty extensive study years ago
Oh,
about
no.
people who have bumper stickers and
Uh-oh.
all that stuff on their car. It was maybe we could find the article, but it's
He said that they often eat hairy zucchini. You're gonna say,
damn it, you stole my line, man. No, but it actually, that was good though. I should have thought of that. That would have been better. But no, it said they're like really aggressive and stuff on the road, and to avoid them, like they're dangerous on the road. I don't know if that's true.
Oh wow!
Do you get very upset on the road, Russ?
No.
No, you don't. Okay.
I do. Sometimes.
My buddy Lorenzo, I guess I don't know if I should be outing him as a conservative, but he's born in Mexico, staunch conservative, and when we were in law school, it was snowing one day, and he lived on campus and knew I was coming in. Texted me in the morning. He said, "Hey, be careful driving on the roads. It's pretty nasty out there. And if you see anybody with an Obama bumper sticker, just stay away from them because you know they're an idiot."
Yeah, you can usually definitely tell some things about people by their bumper stickers. Yeah.
I have a magnet that says "Have a nice day" somewhere else.
See, there you go. See, that's right in line with the article. Yeah.
I love how Russ is always so careful to keep his identity preserved. Like, hey, don't talk about that park that's like 30 miles from my house because people might find out where I live. But here's the exact bumper stickers that I have on my car.
You'd have to know which car to look for, Mike.
What kind of car do you have, Russ?
None of your business. I
One
have
time.
Actually
2025. None of your business.
I think you mentioned it in a different episode, so if people want to piece it together, they
He
can.
actually drives a bicycle with a basket in the front.
That's right.
Oh.
Right.
Well, I guess it's a good
And
lead
a
for
bag
next-
of bees.
So CB said his Adobe froze, so he had to reset the PC. Russ drinks him.
Russ hacked him. I think.
Oh, the Adobe crashed. I don't have that problem with paint. I win by default.
It's kind of like how your bicycle never runs out of gas, right?
Yeah.
Right. Oh, I just noticed what CB put next to the G in the picture of
Yeah.
the doc. I didn't even notice that till just now. That's funny.
And what?
He got one
Is it-
over at me. Look at the picture in
The
the
little,
document.
the little cute peeking alien.
Put it
Freaking
back up.
little
I can't see it.
chihuahua.
Hang on. I'll bring it up.
Can I share my?
No, don't do that, Chris.
I want to try.
Oh, don't.
It's better than your desktop.
This is definitely the
Yes.
road.
Really?
arrow. I'm glad that
Over there.
these random conversations happen at the end of the shows because no guest would
there
ever
it
want to.
Oh yeah. Hey, see, they're among us. We don't even notice them.
That's CB might be one of them. Maybe that's how he does this stuff so fast. We're supposed to be super intelligent, so it's all coming together.
Their
now.
Adobe doesn't crash. That's the difference.
Well, that's probably a good point. Yeah, that's funny. CB rocks.
Oh wait, I got a message. Let me see. Oh, I think.
How's that? I'll have you guys look at that.
That's no good. Definitely no good.
Russ, what are you doing with that?
I'm letting her pierce your soul with her eyes.
So what are they then?
Thanks for that.
So what exactly are they then?
Yeah, right. They would talk about the dumbest question. Yeah, I'm here to explain to you exactly what UFOs are. I've known this whole time.
Right. Well, since you actually finally somebody asked what they are.
Since somebody
right.
I guess we can identify the unidentified objects.
We've just been waiting for that.
I've been waiting for 8 years or so to ask me what freaking things are.
Right.
I would have told everybody.
You're such a talented journalist.
I would have told everybody.
Wait, why are we staring at her eyes? Why are we staring at her eyes?
So they can pierce your soul.
Okay.
Because Russ is in love with her. That's what it is.
I think
Russ is in love with her.
Did anybody say? I feel like
you should bring her to the fight, Russ.
Billy, Chris, and Russ didn't respond to the message I sent them. It was a screenshot from, I hate to say it, but TikTok. And this guy goes on TikTok lives and he says, he won't speak until a girl that is his type comes on the live.
Oh, really?
A bunch of girls go on the live and he just is silent until
I'm
the one
sure
that
people
he
donate
likes
money
goes on
though,
will
right?
say
People
something.
probably pay money.
So
probably.
I said
People
Russ
probably
can,
pay money for that, right?
I said Russ can find his future wife that way.
No.
You never know.
People pay money
I
for
think
what?
that people pay money the longer he's on there. I think the longer he's on there, people have to pay money.
Is that how it works? Who is it?
Who? I don't know, some random person, but I think
That's what Brian was telling me. Brian was telling me that people sit on there and they get people to pay them money.
Oh no, I know how it works. They get gifts from people. So when you're on live, you like the live, and then
I've
people
seen
can
some
give
of
you gifts from 99 cents up to like.
So his gig, he's out of the job the minute he starts talking. It's no longer interesting.
Yeah, that's true.
Right?
Pretty much.
But anyway, I was sending it to Philly, Chris, and Russ because I don't know.
The whole gimmick is nobody's good enough for him.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it is. People are TikTok. Literally, Mike G called it out. It's like a circus? Like it's the most
freak show.
Freak show. I mean, the craziest things. I've seen a lady who collects Black Widow spiders and is literally holding them.
Oh, I think you did send that one to us. Yeah.
Oh, she'd lose it on us right now if she heard that she was being called a freak show.
There's a
collecting Black Widows is totally normal.
She raises them and then grows them and keeps them.
And she trains them like
they were
bag of
crawling
bees.
on her hand. Like I've seen the craziest things, and I feel like I'm at one of those. Like in where I'm from, in this rural area.
Let's reach out.
Where I'm from, we have this this every year we have this, not a circus, but you guys call it like a show, like a
freak show, sideshow or something,
like a farm show. Yeah, and they have they literally had sideshow things. Like I'm not making this up. I went through it. There was they said there was like the snake woman, and I could have swore it was a snake woman. I don't know. They had the biggest pig ever.
They usually have like certain things. Yeah,
I don't know how they made this stuff look real.
In New Hampshire, there was always a fair.
They had a little people,
Cheshire Fair.
I
don't
they
know
had
if
the
they
biggest,
do
the
that.
biggest
Isn't it
pig
sort of
ever. You had to go on and pay a quarter and go see the biggest pig.
Do they still do it though with the people? Isn't it sort of like out of favor now? Or
I don't know if they do, but I remember seeing it. I remember feeling so bad for this tiny little woman that was like rocking back and forth. I'm like, what the heck? It wasn't really right. It didn't sit right with me.
Yeah. Seems a little.
I got jammed up with the snakehead woman.
What happened?
What?
You got jammed up with it, Mike?
I got scammed with the snakehead woman. It was like,
Oh,
somebody's
you got
half
snake
woman,
eyes.
half snake.
Yeah.
And so I paid the couple of bucks. I went in there. It was literally this lady with her head in a hole. There's a hole in the middle of the table, and she was sitting under the table. Her head was through there, and they had like a stuffed animal snake laying on the table next to her. And
Right.
she had like no teeth. And she's talking to everybody. I was like, come on, man. Give me my
Imagine she's got to
$2
sit
back.
there all day for like a quarter a pop and do that.
Yeah. I wanted my quarterback.
Right. Yeah, that's actually, I do recall like going in the little trailer at the fair in my hometown, and it was like that. It wasn't at all what you saw on the posters outside, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But they definitely did use little people. Like, I don't know if that was like wrong or if the little people are making money, but I remember seeing the one rocking back and forth, and like it kind of haunted me for a while. I was like, didn't seem right.
Yeah, there's some wacky stuff that goes on in that whole thing, I guess. Yeah.
For sure.
For sure.
Well, this went out the
That
rail.
lady that collects black widow spiders should invent the spider in a suitcase.
Hey, there you go.
I like how I have like funny stuff for the show sometimes, but I just already am like, you know what? I'm not putting it up because Russ will say, man, I don't want to put it up.
No, a lot of the stuff you bring on, we end up just like laughing our heads off. I love it. I try not to look at it too much.
Yeah, you can't look at it beforehand.
Yeah, it's funnier. Yeah.
Russ, I have something in the works for you, buddy boy. LOL. I will have Russ riding on a mouse cartoon. That's from CB.
They're dead.
All right.
What?
We'll have to wait till next time for CB.
Yeah.
Russ,
We'll have to
what was
wait
that?
till next time.
I'll tell you later.
Oh my gosh.
Squidward.
Well, Russ, now you kind of revealed it.
That's all the time we got for today. Stick around for We the People, the Constitution Matters. Pastor David Whitney, Professor Philadelphia. I'll be joining as your legal analyst. We miss you, Ellie. Daddy loves you.